Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ask Ken show. It's such an honor having everyone who's tuning in. Um, and I'm so excited to be here. The way that this works is what you do is you type in your questions, whatever platform you're watching from, type it in. And then Kevin from Cavalli Channeling will be answering or asking me the questions, and I will live channel the answers live right here on the air. And if you want to know anything more about me, please check out my website at channelinginc.com. I have upcoming certification workshops. I have intro channeling workshops, intro animal communication workshops, and also you can book a one-on-one with me there. So it's tons of fun, lots going on. And we're going to have a blast today. Yeah, Kevin, what are you pointing at, Kevin?
All my certificates I have from your channeling course.
Yeah. And then Kevin started up his Cavalli channeling program where he does readings. So if you want a reading, please go to him. And he does phenomenal readings. And that's all because of the
Thank you,
courses that
sir.
he took.
And I
Yes.
apologize for the technical difficulties. That looks like we're up and running on all our pages now, including Facebook. So when you log in, I see we've got a few people logging in already. Let us know where you're tuning in from and type in your questions. I will ask Ken. He will live channel the results. The results. That's a weird way to say that.
Please make sure when if you're watching right now, just take a moment and message us and say your name, where you're from, just so we can give you a shout out. We love to, give our audience a shout out where you're from.
There we go. My son Jake says you're up and running on YouTube. Thanks, my friend. And
Woohoo!
Barb Sim, hello, how are you? She says, hi, gentlemen. I think she's talking to us, but I'm not sure because not too
Yeah.
often that we get called gentlemen.
Well, I
I,
Barb is a fantastic lady. I originally met her. She was in Calgary. I'm not sure. I think
she is in Calgary. She actually tuned in for Graham and I did a show, well, 2 Wednesdays ago. No, last Wednesday, live readings, mini readings, and she tuned in to that.
Aw.
Yeah, she's a very yes. I've met her before. I'm not sure where. I think it was in one of your courses that we took together. So let's jump into it. Now that we've got the technical difficulties figured out, I'm not going to repeat the last one because we already did that one. So we're just going to go forward. Oh, this is a great question. Actually, I got this question today from somebody when I was out doing some stuff.
Oh.
For years, I've been asking my spirit guides, but they haven't come through for me. Why not?
Yeah, depending on the context of this question is depending on where you're at in your spiritual development and your channeling abilities. I know for me, in my early days, I would be asking my guides, spirit guides, questions, and then I would be like, "They're not coming through. They're not coming through," and it had nothing to do with them. It actually had to do with me and my abilities, and I had blocks, and
Yes.
I needed healing and clearing and other things like that. So as I kept working on doing my healing and clearing and doing my spiritual development between those two things, that's why I recommend my students do both of them. Then I was able to more clearly over time to be able to hear their messages and their guidance and things like that. The other context, the other possible angle of this question is that what people might be meaning is like I'm asking them for this, help me find the man of my dreams, the guy of my dreams, and they're not coming through. It's not that they're like at your everyday beck and call to solve all your problems and make things, but what they can do is they can guide you and help you and suggest you do these certain things and do those certain things. I know. I met a gentleman here recently, and he's talking about like this kind of women that he wants, and he's talking about I wanted to be this way, and I wanted to be that way, and I wanted to be this way, and I wanted to be that way, and I never really got into it, but I was thinking on the back of my mind because I used to do this where if I want something in somebody else, then I should try my best to be that way. So, for example, he's
Yes.
talking about like, I want someone with a positive attitude. Okay, well, then you have a positive attitude. I want somebody who's skinny. And I'm like, okay, well, then you be skinny, all that. I want somebody who's spiritual. Okay, well, then you be spiritual, whatever it might be. And I remember
Yes.
like, when I was in my single phase, like I kept focusing on how can I be the person that I want to attract, and this way it's equal. It's like I'm attracting someone that has those similar values and concepts and attributes about them that I'm looking for in a partner. So I think that's really important. And a lot of times your spirit guides are giving you guidance, but you need to put in the work to get there. For example, some people are like, "Oh, I want to, fill coliseums full of people." Okay, great, that's great. I think that's a great aspiration to have. But what are you doing to get to a point where you could fill coliseums full of people? And that's where your guides will come in. They will help you with that and to do the background stuff, the preliminary stuff, the this all the things that have to lead up to getting to that point.
Yes, makes total sense. Total sense. We have a full board of questions from viewers. This is
Yay!
awesome. This person asked not to mention the person's name, and you'll understand why. How do you know you've made the right decision when it comes to careers?
Um, Careers. So I used to actually do work for the government. I used to do career planning. I developed entire curriculum for like 1 month programs and career planning. So I know this actually quite well. There's a couple misconceptions about careers is some people think that like when they choose a career, it needs to be a perfect fit. That's not the case. I've never had a job that's been a perfect job or a career that's been a perfect career. So you want to find a career that is a relatively good fit. And the
Yes.
reason I say that is to take the pressure off of yourself to think that you have to find the perfect occupation, the perfect job. Another thing also too is sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and do a job that's going to pay the bills, even if it's not necessarily the most ideal job. And then in the meantime, while you're doing I call them like a job to get by, while you're doing that, then you look at, okay, what do I need to do to get into a career that's more of a better fit? Do I need to apply for different jobs? Do I need to go back to school? Do I need to get some certification, some credentials? Am I called to start up my own business? And how can I work and develop my own business in the evenings and weekends while I'm working this kind of pretty good, not bad kind of job that
Love
pays
it.
the bills? So some people are like, "Oh, well, I just want to do writing for a living." I'm like, "Okay, that's great, but you still need something to pay the bills while you're doing your writing ventures and stuff like that." Or, I want to be a healer. And I'm like, "That's great. Awesome. Let's do that." But what can get a job that's going to pay the bills while you're working on building up your following and your healing job. And I had to do the same thing for me and my business is I had to be very patient. And another tip that I suggest to people is that if you are looking to do like a business outside of your day job, the one that pays your bills, then what I recommend you do is you 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 work really hard in the evenings and weekends until you get to a point where you not just get to that same level of pay, but where you surpass that level of pay significantly. I'm talking like 50% to double the amount, if even.
Yes.
Because what happens, too many people, they go, "Oh, now I've reached this level, same level of pay. And then so I'm going to quit my day job." But what happens in this industry, at least in pretty much every industry where your own business owner, is things fluctuate, things go up and down.
Yes.
So if you're like you match this pay and you have this certain lifestyle, certain standard of living, and then you're like, "Okay, I'm good, I could quit this job." But then what happens is when it dips, and it will, usually Christmas time, summertime, when people go camping and holidays, things like that, it might dip a bit. But then you're like, "Oh man, I can't pay my bills," and you're freaking out and you're getting in that scarcity mindset and all that. But if you have a bit of a buffer, then at least when you go up and down, you're above that threshold.
Love that
And
answer.
I'm not gonna kid you on this. It does take a lot of work. It does take a lot of effort. It does take a lot of persistence and consistency, like day in, day out, working on your business to get to a point where you can eventually quit your day job, which is what I've done in my business or in
That
my
is
career.
great answer. Great answer. I'm going to kind of reword this next question from B. McCaig, um, tuning in from beautiful Grand Prairie, Alberta, because her question is quite specific for her. To her, yeah. Um, what do you tell people when someone comes to you, like myself, who has their own business, and but it's at a standstill? What's the best way to be able to ask the proper questions of your guides to be able to move forward?
So, whoever has their own business, or if you want to take notes, I recommend you write this down. What is the next step? It's really that simple. It really is. It's
Cool.
that powerful, and it's like, what is the next step? Because sometimes people are like, like asking their spirit guides. So B has taken some of my channeling training, so she knows how to channel her guides pretty well. But that's like the question I ask myself almost daily. I'm like, what is the next step? And then I just, whatever that, I don't look 5 steps ahead or 10 steps ahead. I'm just like, what is the next step? And it might be putting up a post. It might be taking some action. It might be creating an event. It might be a lot of different things. It might be collaborating with somebody. There could be a gazillion things. And then what I always recommend to my students who have businesses is what they do is they focus on building their clientele and actually doing sessions on a weekly to monthly basis. And while they're doing sessions, then they're doing the behind the scenes work, building the website, building a Facebook business page, doing all this other stuff. Because what too many people try to do is they try to do all this behind the scenes stuff, but they don't actually have any clients. And without clients, you don't have a business.
Yes.
Another thing I also recommend in certain people's cases is sometimes you do need some clearing and healing and clearing, because there are blocks and things that are hindering you from moving forward. Some of it's psychological, some of it could be spiritual, some of it could be different aspects. Like in the ideal world, what would happen is somebody would go for a healing and then they would be 100% fine for the rest of their life and they would never need healing again. I haven't found that to be the case. Why? Because life happens. You're driving down the road and all of a sudden some jerk cuts you off and you get all like, freaked out. And then that could throw your systems off and, get you all triggered and stuff like that. And then you kind of can go out of alignment, which happens. It happens to me, it happens to everyone. And then, going to see a healer once in a while can help get you back on path. And also sometimes what people need is spiritual upgrades. So we're talking like attunements, activations, enhancements, anything that will help to upgrade their systems, that are their non-physical systems, their mental systems, spiritual systems, their aspects like that, so that they can continue their growth, continue their evolution in the real world, in their business. And I also noticed that for my students, sometimes they just need like a spot check, a one-on-one session with me every once in a while. They're like, okay, and then they get they're back up to the races. I do healing and clearing in my one-on-one sessions, and then they're gone and they're channeling again, like really advanced. I've seen this happen so many times where I'm like, why didn't you message me like 3 months ago?
Yes. Yes. Great
Get them back
advice.
up and back on track again. So
Great advice. I hope that was okay. That answered your question, B. Barbara Hall is just saying hello from Paulsbo, Washington. I
hi,
hope I
Barbara.
said your hometown right. Paulsbo, Washington. One of our neighbors down in the US of A. I guess my neighbor now, not yours. I had to. Jackie Turner tuned in from
Hi, Jackie.
beautiful. I believe she's still in Airdrie, from beautiful Airdrie, just home from Belly, actually. She was
Yeah.
over in Belly before you got there, actually.
Yeah. Both the same time.
Yeah. This young gentleman, you might remember him, Mr. Graham Wibstad. He wants to know, how can we add more peace to our lives?
Um, Stop fretting about things that don't really matter.
That's simple. Okay, thank you. We'll carry on
That's
now.
that's a message for me, by the way. Thank you, Graham, for asking the question. It's actually a great question. There's a whole bunch of ways. If anything ever bothers you, the question to ask is, what is it inside of me that upsets me about dot dot dot? If something ever bothers you, the question to ask is, what is it inside of me that needs healing or clearing around dot dot dot? So if you haven't written that down, I would suggest you write that down. What is it inside of me? Because in the ideal world, eventually where I want to get in my journey is I want to get to a point where nothing external bothers me. There's a African proverb that says, if there's no enemy within, then the enemy outside could do me no harm. And the way that I interpret that is,
I love
if
it.
I have no enemies within, no, like nothing bothers me within, then it doesn't matter what happens outside. I can be at peace, inner peace. So it takes a lot of, like in my case, it takes a lot of intentional healing and clearing. I do self healing a lot. I also see other healers on a regular basis. I purposely will jot down those things that I want to work on, things that have been upsetting me and bothering me over the last month, for example, and then I will bring that up with my healer, healer or therapist or whoever it might be that I'm working with at the time, and work through it. And then I also do a lot of self healing on this, and I own it. So this is probably one of the most important
Big
things
one.
is I take 100% responsibility for any
Yes.
time something inside of me gets upset and triggered, and that's my stuff and that's my work to work through. So yesterday there was a big, or 2 days ago there was a big celebration here in Bali where I'm staying right now, and then the day after there was like a day of silence. So I took that entire day of no eating, the entire 24 hours, and no talking. It was complete silence, and I just sat in meditation over and over for that entire 24 hours. And what I did was anytime something came up that bothered me, I would say to myself, that's my work, Ken. That's my work. That's what I need to work through. That's what I need to heal.
That is
And I would do
awesome.
some right then and there on the spot and take ownership of it. And then what you'll notice is, like, just keep working at it. And what you'll notice over the years is that eventually a lot of this stuff will subside. There's a title of an amazing a book. It's called "Don't Sweat the Small Stuff,"
Yes.
and it's all small stuff. That's
It's
actually the title of the
true.
book, and it's so true because if you think of it, we're this tiny, itty bitty bitty little speck of dust floating in the universe. Does it really matter that somebody said something mean to you? Does it really get invited to this thing? Like, in the big scheme of things, is what I'm saying. And don't get me wrong, it's not that some of this stuff doesn't matter, but in the big scheme of things, a lot of this stuff doesn't really matter most of the time. So try your best not to sweat the small stuff.
Well, see, that's funny because I was having a real tough time with it because a good friend of mine decided to move away and went to Belly. And I was having a real issue with it. Had a chat with my guides, and they said, "Don't mess with the small stuff. It's good."
I
I
miss you
had
too,
to.
Kevin.
I miss you tons, my friend. Miss you
That's
tons.
a little
Well,
different. That's
but
like
really, I want to know is how did you stay quiet for 24 hours? That must have been really tough for you because I know you.
that's a little different, Kevin, because this is like a soul connection. Like, we
It
go back
is.
many lifetimes, and so that's like you create like a bond and a connection, and it's like it's almost like an honoring thing when you miss somebody. It's like, yeah. So
Aw,
I miss you
I miss you
too.
too, buddy. Okay. That's why I
Once I
always have,
dodge that
that's
question
why I
about
always have Kleenex close by.
yeah, it's actually really healthy. I talk about meditation in my channeling level 1 workshop, and I call it silent meditation. So it's fine if you want to do guided meditation, all different kinds of meditation. But my favorite towards like my towards helping me with my spiritual growth, and the one that I recommend for my students, is what I call silent meditation, where it's completely silent, including like no music, no noise, nothing, including quieting your mind. So that's what I worked on all day yesterday, was just
So
anytime I
good.
would have thoughts that would come up, I'd go, nope, I'm just going to quiet my mind. And then I'd go into the gap and I would be like nothingness. And then, something would take me out, and then I'd start thinking about things and I go, nope, quiet my mind and go into the gap. And the reason I suggest this is because most people in Western society have like super busy, crazy minds going a gazillion miles a minute. And so if I work on quieting my mind, then it can help me with my spiritual growth, including helping me to discern those subtleties between what my guides are trying to tell me, so that I could pick up on those subtleties and translate it into a message for me. And that's been one of the biggest catalysts that's helped me with my spiritual growth over the years.
It's like the guides know what question I'm going to ask next. They like literally this leads right in to what we kind of a feed to what you were just talking about. Are there different types of guides besides your primary and your secondary guides? Probably should explain for those who don't know primary and secondary guides first.
Yeah, let me take a step back. We have my experience has been most people have somewhere between 3 to 5 spirit guides during any one season of their lives. It could change it could change depending on different seasons. And my experience has been that people have usually one primary spirit guide, and that's the one that works with you most of the time, and then several secondary guides who are on the peripheral and help you. There is also, I've come across, so in spirituality, like, it's very very infrequently, so not that often, is there what's called absolutes, where it's always like this or never like that. So
Yes.
sometimes I'm always careful about like making absolute statements, like it's always like this. And so sometimes, let's say for example, somebody might have three spirit guides, so one of them would be their primary, two would be their secondary. But sometimes every once in a while you get somebody that I call a visiting guide, so they don't really fit into the primary category or the secondary category. They're more, the reason I call them a visiting guide is because they pop in like very infrequently, but once in a while, but they're still considered a guide, but not really, like not a full-time guide like these ones are.
Right.
So that's just the terminology that I came up with, because it kind of makes sense because they visit once in a while, but not, they're not a primary and they're not a secondary. So that would be the exception. They aren't that common. Most people either have, like most people have a primary and a few secondaries, and that's it. And then once in a while a visiting guide, but not that often.
Very cool. Very cool. I know a lot of people, a lot of times, confuse when a loved one from the other side will come in, grandpa, great grandpa. And a lot of people will confuse them as their guide. What's a good way for someone who doesn't channel on a regular basis, but does get, they're intuitive and they get a
Yeah.
little bit of messaging? What's the best way to discern the two?
So it's a great question, and let me back up a second. So somebody who's a member of your Earth family isn't necessarily a member of your soul family. When you die and you cross over, you go to the astral realm to be with your spirit, your soul family. But while you're incarnated, certain members of your soul family will help and assist you while you're incarnated. Those are your spirit guides. So your spirit guides are definitely members of your soul family. That's a requirement, basically. They have to be. So, for example, if grandma is not a member of your soul family, but she dies, she won't be a spirit guide, but she can still come in as a loved one and give you messages and talk to you and communicate
Right.
with you. She's not necessarily a loved. But okay, so the question is though, how can I discern the difference? Like if I have grandma come in, how do I know if she's a spirit guide or just a loved one? There's a really cool trick that I use with my students that I train them is, by the time they get through like channeling level one and then channeling level two, they know their spirit guides inside out. So then in a one-on-one session, what I could do with them is I could say, okay, you have this other soul coming in, let's say grandma. Okay, but you know your spirit guides already because you've taken the channeling level one and level two workshops. So you know them really well, you know them intimately, you know who they are. So let's ask one of your known guides, and they can check for you whether or not grandma is part of your, like a spirit guide or not. So they
Yes.
can do that for you. And sometimes she might be, sometimes a member of your Earth family might be, when they, like that happened to me. My dad died in 2001, and in 2004 he became my spirit guide, and he taught me how to channel so I could teach others how to channel, and that's why I'm here today where I'm at. And he was able to help and assist me with this. So yeah, like there's definitely different ways to go about knowing whether or not. What I don't like people to do is assume it. I've had this happen so many times where people are like, I really want grandma to be my spirit guide, therefore she
Yes.
must be my spirit guide. And just because they want it to be, that doesn't necessarily mean she is. She might just be there because she wants to support you and just let you know that she's there. And also there might be some grieving that needs to take place, so she can come in. She might be coming in for those purposes as well.
I'm so glad you said that because I've had it so many times when I'm in a session with a client and they're convinced that grandma or grandpa, mom or dad, brother, whoever it is their spirit guide. And of course, I truly believe we shouldn't lie to our clients when it comes to spirituality. We have to tell them as it is, as you do during this show, whether it's good or bad. And so I'm like, you know, grandma is here, but she's not really your guide. It's
Yeah.
hard sometimes. People take it like, yes, she is. Like,
Yeah,
so
just because
yeah,
we want something to be doesn't mean it is. And that's where
exactly.
advanced channeling, you have the ability to check this stuff. And then the people who've taken my workshops, they know I kind of call them on them. I'm like, don't make stuff up. You have the
Yes.
ability. I've empowered you to learn how to channel. Now check all this stuff with your guides. Like there's a lot of theories that go on in the spirituality community, and some of them might be accurate, but some of them are total hogwash, and that's okay. You don't have to go around telling people, "Oh, that's a bunch of crap" and all that. You can just check for yourself and be like, "No, in this case, it's not quite accurate. That's okay." Or the question that I like to ask: if it's not accurate, what might be accurate? And then work with channeling your spirit guides to find out something like the way that, because some people are like kind of like close to the truth, like close to what's
Yes.
right, and they're kind of dancing close to it. So let's figure out more like what could be more accurate. And I do that even when I'm reading spiritual books and on and on and on.
It's funny because you've actually have called me out in my when I first started taking your courses a couple times where I was like, I think, and you're like, no, Kevin, stop. You can't think. There's a difference between thinking and knowing,
Yeah,
right? And it's true. It's true.
thinking is your opinion and knowing is checking, and checking with
Yes.
your guides. And then a
Melissa.
lot of people might
Oh,
be watching this right now asking, saying, well, but how do I know I'm getting accurate information from my guides? And that's a great question. That's very common. The way
yes.
that you figure this out is by taking formal training. You go through the workshops, you do one-on-one sessions, and then I can help you walk through it. And by the time you get to the later workshops, channeling level 3, channeling level 4, the animal communication and healing workshop, you'll know like how to channel inside out. You'll be able to discern the difference real easily between your own thoughts and your own thing, your own opinions, and then actually what your guides are giving you. It's pretty profound and life changing.
Yeah, yeah. It's such a cliche saying life changing, but I can look in the camera and stare people in the eye and say it's life changing. Um, Melissa Cameron, hello, young lady. Melissa Cameron says, "Hello, boys."
Hello, Melissa.
Jordy Hemsing has a
Good.
question. Oh, I love this question, Jordy. Absolutely love it. What tips would you have for introducing children to their spirit guides? Oh, goosebumps.
Yeah. One word of caution before I get into this answer is be very careful as a parent not to push your kids too hard and too much into spirituality, because what could happen, and I've seen it happen too many times, is they could dig their heels in and it could backfire. And then instead of encouraging them on a good path towards spirituality, it could actually turn them off of spirituality. So just a little caution for any of your parents out there. And I caution kind of like being patient with them, just taking it slow. One of the things that I suggest for parents is to work with them on some of the things that they learned,
Yes.
but go really slow. It's kind of like, let's say, for example, you've taken all the way to grade 12 math. You're not going to go to your student who's in your child who's in grade 1 and teach them all 12 grades in one sitting. You're going to do what's appropriate to them, and you're going to do it in segments, in very small spurts. So that's what I suggest you do with your children, no matter what their age is, because somebody who's 23-year-old children, a child, or that's your child. But to them, like spirituality is brand new, so they're really like kindergarten. So you're not going to
Yes.
teach them, grade 3 stuff when they're still in kindergarten spirituality, if you know what I mean. So the age thing is irrelevant. More, I'm talking spiritual um, maturity. And a lot of children I've noticed are super connected, super in
Oh,
tune. So the ones that are, if that's one of your children, you might be able to go a bit more advanced, but again, just be careful. Do it in steps, do it in stages. Draw like purposely, and make it fun. Keep it light. Um, and try to like maybe draw it out over several years rather than trying to like you know push 8 hours of, I'm gonna do all this 8 hours with you, and then by the fifth hour they're all like, oh, enough,
I'm
mom, enough,
done. I
I'm done.
always
Yeah,
I
you
always
don't want
tell
to do
my
that. Let them get
clients
to that point.
I always
What's
tell
that,
my
Kevin?
client I always tell my clients, let them ask the questions. Don't
Yeah,
give
that as well.
don't give them answers to questions they haven't asked because they're not ready for it. If they're asking questions about spirituality, that's the time to start encouraging it. Unlike myself, where I used to have dreams I would visit my dad. Ken and I had talked about this many times. I was told
Yeah,
it was evil and never talk about it again. Don't do
right.
that to your children.
Yeah, the best way to help your children grow spiritually is by your practice, your spiritual practice.
Yes.
So being here in Bali, it's phenomenal to watch the locals and the way that they do their spiritual practice. They do it with such humility, where they go and they do their ceremonial thing, and it's not about accolades. They're not like, hey, everybody look at me, and they're not trying to push it down people's throats. They go about doing it in a very humble way, very subtle way, and they just go about doing this every single day, day in, day out, and then their children watch that, and then they want to adopt it as well as they grow up. So it's really a beautiful practice that to the way that you live your life and the way that you treat your children is going to be the best way to encourage them, because
Oh,
it's a concept called
I
through
love it.
attraction, not promotion. And they see what you have, and they're like, oh, I love the way you live your life. I want to live like that. You inspire me. I admire you. I want to know more about how you live your life. And then that's when those, like Kevin said, those questions might come out about, spiritual questions and things like that.
Very, very cool. Few people just saying hi. Paul from Calgary. You know Paul. He says,
Hi,
hey.
Paul. Yeah.
Sophia Makaranis
Yep.
from Vancouver, British Columbia, the west coast of Canada, my
Beautiful.
hometown. Beautiful spot. Shelley Somerville Wasler tunes in from southern Alberta.
Hey, Shelley.
Shelley is always here. Gr- Graham has another great question. I'm curious, to what a degree can we do spiritual healing on ourselves to affect physical healing? For instance, doing the spiritual healing to heal head trauma from concussions.
Yeah. So I definitely recommend people take my channeling level 4 workshop, which I actually teach my healing modalities in it. I go into great detail. Um, it's so powerful, the stuff that I teach you, all the stuff that I've developed and learned over the years. I teach it in that workshop, and we actually practice it, which is really
That's
cool.
cool.
We learn how to do medical mediumship, but on much more advanced levels, where you find the root cause of what's going on. Most things are multifaceted, which means you have to like approach it from different angles, and there's different components or aspects that need healing, and on and on and on. Honestly, a lot of the stuff to do with physical stuff, like a brain or head injury, some of it can be done through spiritual healing. Some of it might not. Some of it you might need to like do some regenerative kind of like supplements or other kind of uh, things like that. And sometimes it takes a combination of physical healing and spiritual healing along. So, like some people are like, oh, I have this gallbladder issue. Can you do spiritual healing on me? I'm like, I can, but you really need to go see a doctor and get some surgery done. And they're like, but I don't want to. I think everything can be done by spiritual healing. And don't get me wrong, I do believe in miracles. However, there are times when Western medicine is appropriate, and just to know those times. And oftentimes, it takes a combination of both Western medicine and spiritual healing to help it. Yeah, to complement it. You
Oh,
got it. Yeah.
yes. We need to mesh more of those in North America. I think North America is so far behind with meshing
Yeah.
modern medicine with ancient medicine, because
So
energy
yeah,
healing is an ancient medicine.
what I was told is that, like in a lot of European countries, let's say, for example, somebody gets in a really bad car accident while they're, being sewn up in intensive care, in this with surgery with all the surgeons around the patient, and then sewing them all back up. You have energy healers working alongside them, putting together
Yes.
his energetic body in the actual surgery room, and that's pretty common in a lot of countries in Europe and things like that. So, yeah,
Isn't that
like
awesome?
I think they're both important. And if anybody's had any like physical trauma, please come see me, because there's a lot of things that I can do to help do the spiritual aspect, which the Western medicine might miss, and it
Yes.
will only complement what the Western medicine is doing with you.
Thank you. So, if you're just tuning in, welcome. Welcome to the Ask Ken show. Plop into the comments where you are tuning in from. And if you have questions, that's where you can type them. It doesn't matter whether you're listening on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Twitch. We got them all covered. And we can, or LinkedIn. We will be able to read the questions in our chat, and we'll get to your questions. Another one that came in during the week, and I love this one, is what is the collective consciousness?
Yeah, the collective consciousness is what happens is, let's say, for example, and this has been documented throughout history, like hundreds of times, if not thousands, where one scientist on one part of the world, they have a great idea, and what happens is they upload this idea into the collective consciousness, which kind of think of it like a cloud that surrounds like the Earth, the planet, and that's the humans. They're putting information up into this collective consciousness on a regular basis, and then another scientist on another side of the world has that same scientific breakthrough at virtually the same time. It's because they've pulled that information from the cloud, from the collective consciousness, and then they've implemented it. And these two scientists don't know each other; they've never heard of each other, but yet there's a breakthrough at relatively the same time, same period on the planet. And this has been documented a whole bunch of times. What's really cool, the reason why I teach this in my channeling level 1 workshop is because there's many different areas or sources of places we could get information from. It could be from our soul, it could be from our higher self, it could be from our spirit guides, it could be from any other kind of soul. We talked about like grandma, for example, earlier. It could be from sprites, fairies, dragons, and on and on and on. There's a whole bunch of, it could be from crystal divas and all that stuff. I teach my students how to retrieve information from those different sources, and we do the actual exercises in the workshops. Another place that you could also be getting information from is called the collective consciousness. And this happened to me maybe about 15 years ago now. I was dating this lady in Edmonton, and she's super connected. She's a channeler as well. And at that time, I was developing my own healing technique. It's called the integration method, is what I called it. And I had all these different modalities in it. It was phenomenal. And I was testing it on a bunch of guinea pigs. But then I kind of sat on it for a while, like a few months. And then she eventually said to me, my girlfriend at that time, she said, Ken, if you don't release this modality, somebody else is going to pick it up and they're going to release it, and then it'll be too late. You'll have missed your opportunity. I'm like, nah, that's a bunch of hogwash. That's not true. And sure enough, like 3 months later, I pulled up my LinkedIn profile on my phone, and I've never seen this person before. They're not on my LinkedIn friends list or anything, so I don't know how I came across this. But they, like, as soon as I pulled up my phone, I looked at this guy's like posting, and it's like, it's the integration method to a T. Exactly. I'm like, no. I'm
Oh
like,
no.
he was right. And I told her that, and she's like, see, I told you so. And I'm like, dang it. So I never forgot that lesson that I learned. And now anytime I get an idea to release something and publish it to the public, I do it right away. so I don't, so I don't have that
Yes.
again. Yeah.
Now, here's a follow up question to it. When people talk about collective consciousness affecting them, does it really affect them as much as they think?
Yeah. So what happens is they actually have, it's called the Schumann resonance. These scientists have put up radars or antennas around the planet. If you can look it up, you can Google it. They have Schumann resonance, and what happens is they track the overall like ups and downs of the human species, of how we're doing like emotionally and how we're feeling about life or whatever, just like things, just how we're doing overall. So they actually can track it, and then during major world events that can happen, it could go down, or during major world events where there's lots of compassion poured into something, it can actually go up and raise positive in a more positive way. So what a lot of people think is that they're being affected by the consciousness, like the what I've found, if I check, so if I were to ask like a pendulum or muscle testing or something like that, does the collective consciousness affect me? And the answer I'm going to get is yes. And that's a very beginner way of channeling, is just asking yes no questions with the pendulum or
Yes.
muscle testing or something like that. And what I teach my students to do is how to do more advanced channeling, where you can delve deeper into the question, and you don't do that with any of those tools. You do it with channeling your spirit guides. And so the question that I ask is, does the collective consciousness affect me? And the answer I get, I'm doing it right now, is yes. But then on a scale of low, medium, high, or nominal, and this is really important. So for those of you, if you have pen and paper, write this down. Then you want to ask the next question, which is, how much on a scale of low, medium, high, or nominal does the collective consciousness affect me? And when I check, it's like low to nominal. It's so
Yes.
minuscule, so minute, that it really doesn't have too much of an effect on me. So what I instead I try to focus on is things that have a bigger effect on me, like what's my mindset? Am I raising my vibration through joy and laughter and happiness? And that's why my slogan is called Spirituality is Meant to Be Fun, because I try to keep spirituality fun, but also outside of spirituality, I keep my life fun as well. I try to like laugh and play and keep things light, and exercise, and all those things contribute a lot more to your overall vibration than the collective consciousness does.
That makes total sense. Total sense. Another shout out, Perry Bassham just says, "Hi Ken." I'm not sure where Perry is tuning in from.
Hi,
If
Perry.
you if you can, Perry, just type in where you're tuning in from. You had mentioned earlier, we do this quite often, I think, in the spiritual spiritual community. I don't like the word industry. Anyways, you mentioned your higher self, your soul, and your being. What's the difference between those three?
It was funny when you said, I don't like the word industry. I'm like, okay, Kevin, what is it inside of me that needs to be healed or cleared?
That's funny because I was like, I have to check on that one because, and it does. And I say it quite often. And every time I'm like, oh.
Because ideally, where I want to get in my journey is it doesn't matter what words somebody else uses or says. Like I've had
The
people,
label.
they get hardcore triggered whenever somebody uses the word God. And I've actually co-facilitated workshops with people that, if one of the students say that word, they all of a sudden like, oh, they get all like upset in the class to the
Oh,
student
wow.
or in the group. And I'm like, whoa, whoa. And eventually where I want to get in my life is it doesn't matter what word other people use. I understand the context of what they're getting at, and I could, interchange it with a word that suits me better, like, source
Creator.
or creator or universe or whatever other word. But if somebody uses the word God, it doesn't bother me, or whatever,
Yeah.
or another one of those other words, it doesn't bother me because I get the gist of what they're getting at, and I
Right.
feel the energy behind the word rather than that word itself that bothers me.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So your soul, it actually resides right here, right in your sternum area. That is the core aspect of who you are. It is the essence of who you are. It is that part of you that goes from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime, and also in between lives. It holds your characteristics, it holds memories, it holds your attributes, it holds a whole bunch of stuff about you. Sometimes people need soul healing, sometimes people need soul retrieval. I do all that stuff, and also your soul has a purposes, and I say plural on purpose, has many purposes and reasons for wanting to incarnate this lifetime. So one of the exercises that I do, or actually 4 or 5 exercises I do around this topic, is to find out what your purpose is of incarnating are, so you can fulfill those purposes and you can do what you're really meant to do while you came here to this planet. And I could go into, like, I could do a whole entire 2 days
Oh,
workshop
yeah.
just on your soul. Your higher self resides 1 foot above your head, and not a lot of people know this, but it actually also resides in the astral realm. So it resides in the fourth dimension, which is where the astral realm resides. It is an aspect of you, and the reason why it's so powerful to learn how to channel your higher self is because your higher self is kind of like your spirit, like a spirit guide, but is an aspect of you, which is really cool because that's where your spirit guides also reside, is in the fourth dimension in the astral realm. But this is a component of you, and there's other components of you that also reside in the astral realm. Um, this is one of them, called your higher self, and your higher self is constantly trying to give you direction and guidance from that higher perspective, hence the name higher self. When somebody talks about your spirit, is what they're talking about is your overall essence. So for example, when I say, like, look at Kevin's spirit, his overall essence is fantastic, it's great, it's uplifting, it's vibrating at high levels, and he has a great spirit. Does that make sense? His
That makes,
overall
yes,
essence.
for
Yeah.
sure. Sorry.
And by the
Hey,
way, that is true what I just said about you,
oh,
Kevin.
you're such a sweetheart. I'm going to have to go to Delhi. Uh, you mentioned, and again, we throw around these terms in the spiritual industry. And you said the word soul retrieval. Can you kind of explain what soul? Because I think a lot of people have a misconception what soul retrieval really means.
Yeah, so my experience has been that most people need soul retrieval to some respect or another. It's pretty much impossible not to go through lives where you have major traumatic events. So what can happen is you can have a major traumatic event, and then your soul can actually become splintered into different realities. And now, when you incarnate in this lifetime, because most of them have happened from past lifetimes, it could happen from this lifetime as well. But a lot of times it happens from past lifetimes, and then you incarnate into this lifetime, but your soul isn't all there. It's not all like, have you ever felt like sometimes you're like, I don't feel whole, or I don't feel complete, or I feel like something's missing? That's probably a sign that you need soul retrieval, and it's because your soul literally isn't complete. It's not there. It is complete. It's just scattered into different realities. So what soul retrieval is, the process that I do is I will like literally gather all those missing pieces. I will bring them back to this reality, to this earth plane where you are right now. And then after, like, a lot of people think, oh, that's it, that's just soul retrieval. But I realize, and again, with channeling, you can figure all this stuff out. There's actually a lot more steps that go into soul retrieval than just bringing the aspects back. And what happens, what I do after that is I then do healing on those aspects, and then I cocoon it, I heal it, and then I also lift the burdens of the soul as well. And
Nice.
then I also fill it with love and light, and to because you have to fill the stuff that you remove. You
Of
want to
course.
fill it. Yeah, that's really important. And most people that have had soul retrieval with me, they can totally tell the difference in their lives, and it makes a difference in all aspects of their lives.
Is it a one-time thing or is it a many-time thing?
I used to think that, and then I realized, like, a lot of my students, I would be doing soul retrieval with them on a regular basis, because every time I'm gathering more aspects back,
Thank
doing the
you.
healing on
Yeah.
it, gathering more aspects back, doing the healing on it. It's a
Similar
great
to
question.
healing, it's just a continuous thing.
Yeah, and a lot of people, like, they think that, if I go see a healer one time, I'm good.
Done.
And what I found is that you start to get the real results in the third, fourth, fifth, sixth sessions, like right around then. So when you start to, because it's accumulative, but the big benefits start to happen later on. And the cool thing is with channeling and healing, like being a healer, is every time the person comes to me, I can tune in and tailor that healing session towards what they need right then and there, plus give them any activations, attunements, spiritual upgrades that they need as well. And we do that every single time, which every single session would be completely different from the previous ones.
That's very cool. Just so people know, I know we're getting close to top of the hour. We're going to go about 10 minutes extra just because we had a bit of a technical difficulty at the beginning. So if you're okay with it, Ken, can we go another 10, 15 minutes?
Yeah, let's do it. This is fun. I'm having fun.
Awesome.
And
Barbara.
by the way,
Oh,
if you want to know more about me and my upcoming certification workshops, please visit my website, channelinginc.com. And I have tons of workshops coming up. And also, I have availability if you would like to book a one on one session with me. It will also include channeling training, and also the healing and clearing and the spiritual upgrades that I mentioned earlier.
that is very cool. Very cool. Barbara Hall, I'm not sure where she's tuning in from. She wants to know if can you tell us our life's purpose?
I saved that exercise purposely for my channeling level 3 workshop. And the reason why I do that is because by the time you take 14 hours of training level 1, 14 hours training level 2, and then you get to the end, another 13 and a half hours of training in level 3, then you're more adept and competent in getting the answer to getting the answers directly from your guides yourself. I can channel them. I can get the answers for you. What I found, though, is that just because I say, okay, this is your spiritual path and your spiritual purpose, with when you learn the skills of how to channel, then you're empowered how to do it without me. So then let's say you get the answers in level 3 of what your purposes are, why you're meant to, what you're meant to do at this lifetime. Then you can also get further future guidance, like, what action steps do I need to take? And it's going to be constantly, they're going to be able to navigate you through those steps on fulfilling your purposes and fulfilling the reasons why you're here, rather than just a one-time answer, which is great. But then you're like, okay, now what? Like, where do I go from here? And that's where, so I can do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but you can also do the channeling workshops, and in channeling level 3, I save that purposely for them because you're more competent and confident in receiving answers from your guides.
Am I right in believing or thinking, your purposes can change as you go through life as well.
Yeah, for sure. So for me, I knew that one of my purposes was to raise my daughter. And that was like, that's why I say purposes, because while I was raising my daughter as a full time single father, I was also working on my spiritual development, my spiritual curriculum, and doing my training and building up my following, my audience, and things like that. So that was part of my purpose while I was raising my daughter. My daughter is now 21. She has, two jobs. She has an apartment on her own. She has her own vehicle. She's set. She's good. It doesn't mean that we're still not, we don't, we still communicate and talk and all
Oh,
that,
yeah.
but I'm not raising her because that season of my life is done. I've done that part. So now my purposes can focus onto other things. So it's a great question, Kevin. I'm glad you asked that. And also to be open to that things might change. Your purposes might be
Yes.
change. Like there might be a season when you're meant to take care of a sick family member or a pet or something like that, but then that passes and then you're on to the next phase of your life as well.
Nice. Janelle Smith checks in and sends hearts to you.
Hi,
So
Janelle. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for tuning in.
Janelle is tuning in on YouTube.
Yay.
Graham is full of great questions tonight. Keep them coming, buddy. How can we better connect with our spirit guides? Even for somebody who, like ourselves who are connected 24/7, how can we take that to the next level?
Yeah. One of the most foundational things I recommend my students do is they do what I call the ground center channel using source energy exercise. And we can actually do it right now if you want. So, what I recommend you do
Yeah, let's do it.
is everyone, if you're watching this, just close your eyes for a moment. It'll just take a couple minutes, maybe 1 to 2 minutes maximum. And what I'll get you to do is take a nice deep breath. And then I'm going to get you to focus on grounding yourself. Ground yourself through your feet. Imagine roots coming out of your feet, going deep, deep, deep into the earth. And then also imagine a cord coming out of your root chakra, going around the center of the earth, and then making it nice and taut. So go ahead and do this right now. Ground yourself really deep, really strong. Good. And then now I'm going to get you to center yourself. So what I mean by centering yourself is gathering all your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions from the past, bring it to the present. Gather all your thoughts, emotions, your feelings from the future, bring it to the present, and go ahead and center yourself. Bring yourself to this present moment. 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and do this. And try to calm your mind, drop your mind into your body. Most of us live on our heads too much, so try to just drop into your body, be in your heart center. And then the next thing I will get you to do is channel using source energy. So go ahead and draw in energy through your crown, have it come all the way down through to your upper chakras and then down through your lower chakras. And it actually flows in both directions. And then go ahead and do this and let it flood your body. Don't be shy. And while you're in this state, you're in a more conducive state to channel and to be able to really feel those nuances or little idiosyncrasies between your guides, and you can feel those subtleties. It's a lot easier at this state to be able to do this. And this is why I recommend this to my students that you try to do the ground center channel using source energy exercise on a regular basis um, to help you. It only takes a minute. And eventually you could get to a point where you can do it with your eyes open. So I used to channel when I was working for the government. I would channel in board meetings and things like that. And they'd be like, "Oh, Ken, how'd you know that? That was so insightful." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know." And all I would do is I would just take a moment, take a deep breath, and then ground center channel using source energy. And to them, all they thought is I'm just taking a deep breath. They don't know any of the other things that's going on behind the scenes.
That's so cool.
Um, Graham is also, I believe, referring to some more advanced techniques. So there's like a whole bunch of ways on how to channel your guides at much higher levels that I go through in the workshops, and I also go through in one-on-ones. So we have a whole bunch of different clairs or different ways that we can communicate with our spirit guides. What a lot of beginner channelers do is they just focus on their one or two strongest ones. And what I do in the workshops and one-on-one is I will help them to advance those other clear abilities so that they can get a more well-rounded answer. Then they could also go into more detail and more depth. And then I also have one of the most advanced techniques that I teach my students is what's called the tunneling technique, where you tunnel down and you go deeper and deeper with your spirit guide to get them to elaborate and to go into detail about the messages that they're trying to give you. It's so powerful and it's a game changer. And I actually walk my students through it after when they join my 6 month strategic channeling program. I'll get a blank piece of paper and I'll walk them through it, and it's like game changer for
It's
your
fun.
channeling abilities.
I love that one.
Great question, Grant.
It was a great question. Thanks, buddy. Um, it's funny. This question literally leaped off the page at me as I opened my eyes after finishing, because I said even for people who are connected, always connected, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The question is, what do you mean when you say you're always connected, or you're always channeling?
Yeah, like I tell my so I always I'm always channeling, always, like 24/7. I never not channel. But what I mean though, like a lot of my students, they ask me this. They're like, "Wow, like does that mean you're always getting messages and always conversation?" I'm like, "No, no, no. That's not what I mean by that. What I mean by always channeling. So if you want to learn the ABCs, always be channeling. Come visit me. Come to my workshops. Visit channelinginc.com. But what I mean by always be channeling is like imagine like a satellite dish. So you have a satellite dish. Remember back in those days when people have satellite dishes on their houses and stuff like that? Well, that satellite dish is always on, and then the receiver is always ready and available for information to come in. But that doesn't mean there's always information coming in. So, for example, let's say I'm going about living my life, and I'm going for a walk in the park, and all of a sudden I notice one of my spirit guides come in. I'm like, oh, okay, this is this guide. Okay, do you have any messages? They're like, yeah, I want to give you this message, that message, this message, that message. I'm like, okay, anything else? They're like, no, that's it. I'm like, thank you very much. I continue walking in the park. And then maybe later I go to the grocery store on the way home from the park. And then, at the grocery store, I noticed that one of my spirit guides come in. I'm like, oh, okay, another spirit guide comes in. This other guide wants to give me some suggestions on health advice. No, no, Ken, put those chips back. Those aren't good for you. Buy this fruit and vegetables
No
instead. I'm like, dang,
cookies.
right? No cookies, yeah, stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, fine. And I always teach my students, do your best to try to follow the guidance of your guides, because if I teach you how to
Yes.
channel but you don't follow their guidance, it's all for nothing anyways. So, and they always have your best interest in mind, including not eating the cookies. So what I don't do though is I don't a lot of people do, especially at the beginning, and this is common, is they'll open up that satellite receiver and they'll go, okay, I want to get a message from my guide. They get the message and then they close it down. I'm like, no,
Yes.
what are you closing it down for? Keep it open all the time.
You never
Like you
know
don't
when that message is going to
satellite
come.
receiver. Yeah, and then this way
Yes.
you're available from when they come next, and then you can you're ready to receive the next message from the same guide or another guide or whatever it might be. But so always be channeling. To me, the ABCs is like you always have that receiver on, and that's what I recommend for my students. It's totally safe, it's totally fine. And I always suggest to my students you're working in the light. And what I do in my more advanced workshops is I teach them how to identify things that are not of the light. So if something ever comes along, like I don't want my students living in fear, thinking, oh, I have to shut down this stuff in case something not of the, no, no, no. You keep it open, but if something not, you don't go out looking for it. But if something happens to come
Ooh.
across your path, which is very rare, it's a lot more rare than people think. And then what you do is you can take care of it. And there's techniques that I teach my students. We practice this in the workshops on how to take care of these things. But you always have the receiver open so that you can always receive information from your spirit guides. And it's just so much fun. It's awesome.
Now, knowing that we have our satellite dish open all the time, do you sit and wait for your spirit guides to come, or do you just ask them questions?
So there's two ways that I suggest my students channel. One is what they do is as they're going about living their everyday life, when one of their spirit guides comes and wants to get their attention, that they're aware of it. No more, la, 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 hello, McFly, like pay attention, pay attention. No more like, just obliviousness, because most of us are oblivious to our spirit guides. But now that I've taught you the techniques on how to be aware of them, when you feel their presence and you notice their presence, communicate with them. Hey, what's up? What's going on? And sometimes, like when my dad in the early days, he would be like, yeah, I would notice his presence come in and I'd just be going about my business. And he'd be like, I'd be like, hey, dad, what's up? He'd be like, oh, nothing. Do you have any messages? He's like, no, just hanging out. I'm like, okay, that's
Go.
fine. I'll continue on with what I'm doing. No big deal. And then sometimes, though, he does have messages. And if he does, I recommend to my students they go find somewhere quiet and receive the message from your spirit guide.
Yeah.
The other thing that I suggest that my students do is on a regular basis, make time for your spirit guides.
Yes.
Purposely allocate times. Go somewhere quiet. I recommend first thing in the morning, before you even get out of bed, connect with your guides. I recommend a few times during the day, take 5 minutes, go sit on a couch, a chair, or something like that, and invite one of your spirit guides to come in. Do the ground center channel using source energy exercise I just walked you through first. Take that deep breath, get yourself in a more conducive state to channel, and then invite one of your spirit guides to come in, and then practice your channeling abilities. I tell my students I'm no one special. I just, all I've done is I practiced this for thousands and thousands of hours, and I still to this day, I practice my channeling daily, every day. And one of my yoga instructors, she would say to our group, she's been trained in a whole bunch of different countries, India, Indonesia, Thailand, a whole bunch of different countries around the world. And so she's a very traditional kind of yoga instructor. And she would say, it's not a yoga perfection, it's a yoga practice.
Yes.
And the same concept comes with channeling. It's not a channeling perfection, it's a channeling practice. So you just keep practicing. There's no such thing as, oh, I've arrived, I'm there. You're constantly getting better, you're constantly improving, just like you do in yoga. As you go to yoga classes and you practice your moves and your techniques and your breathing and all that and being present, same thing happens with your channeling practice. So just keep practicing, and as you invest the time in now, and it will pay off dividends in the long run. And have fun with
Awesome.
it. Keep it light. Keep it fun.
Thank you. Because spirituality is supposed to be.
Fun. Spirituality is meant to be fun. So keep it fun. Keep it light. Keep it
There we
upbeat.
go. Well, that's going to wrap up the show for this month of March. We're at the getting to the end of March already, buddy. Where did the year go? It's
Wow.
just going by so quick. Our next show you and I are going to do together will be, I'm trying to pop up my calendar here. Give me a half a second. It's the
Fourth Wednesday of the month.
fourth Wednesday of May, which will be the 25th of May.
Yeah.
I look forward to it. In the meantime, if you need to get a hold of Ken Lewicki, really easy, channelinginc.com.
Yeah.
You can
I'm
check
on
him
all
out
the
on.
social media sites. You can find me. You can private message me. I make myself available to my students. So don't be shy. Reach out and say hi.
If you
Would you
want to
like
book
that?
a one-on-one, you have
Yep.
lots of one-on-one sessions available, and you have workshops coming up. Even though you're in Belly, your workshops are staying the same for right now. You're just staying
Yeah.
up all night and doing the workshop. Um, and they can go on your website and check all that out. Till next month, have a good one, everybody.